Hello, young scholars. This is Mr. Martirone with your flipped classroom on European exploration. Now, as you recall from our previous classes on exploration, we know that the Europeans have been shut out of the trade system. So, what were the motives for European exploration? We call these the three G's of exploration: gold, God, and glory. The gold represents economics. So anyone who could find more stable trade routes to Asia would become a richer, more powerful country. The God represents Europeans' desire to expand Christianity. Remember, exploration comes on the eve of the Protestant Reformation in Europe. So Christianity is at a crossroads. So European explorers are looking to spread Christianity wherever possible. And finally, glory. Any country that could be the first to go here or there, any country that can control the seas and thus controlling the trade routes, maintains a global prestige. One of the first European countries that takes the lead in exploration is Portugal. Portugal is the westernmost country in Europe on the Atlantic Ocean. So under the leadership of Henry the Navigator, Henry who wasn't a sailor himself, but he brought together mathematicians, astronomers, and other scientists to begin exploring new trade routes. And they first start setting sail west to the small islands, the Azore Islands, that are hundreds of miles off the west coast of Portugal. This enables explorers and mathematicians to start practicing what it would be like for a Western voyage. So all throughout the 1400s, Europeans are developing new technologies that will enable a westward voyage. The first piece of technology we can't neglect is the printing press. Because of the printing press, ideas are able to be communicated much more easily and much more quickly. From there, we have the astrolabe that was developed. This was used for measuring the stars, because what people noticed when you go below the equator, you have a different set of stars than you would see in the northern and southern hemispheres. A more accurate compass means that you can begin to leave land behind and navigate the high seas. We also see the development of what's called a sextant, and this is used for measuring distance between objects like stars. While out at sea, navigators could measure the different distances between the stars and develop their fixed point on a certain latitude. Sextants are even used today in modern spacecraft. Spacecrafts that don't have a platform of north, south, east, or west use stars to determine their fixed attitude when orienting in between space. And finally, better, more accurate maps were a game changer for exploration. Better, more accurate maps meant that you could stay on the high seas longer, you could trade more, and travel greater distances, thus giving you an edge over your competitor. However, explorers still faced a practical problem. How do you sail into the wind? And for that, Europeans developed something called the carvel. This was a new type of sailing vessel that allowed Europeans to sail against the wind. And if you're going to find a new trade route by heading east to west, you need something that's going to catch the wind and turn it to your advantage. The carvel allows Europeans to do that. Columbus's three ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, were types of carvels. So let's take a look at the actual voyages of European exploration. We begin in 1488 with the expedition of Bartholomew Diaz as he rounds the Cape of Good Hope in Africa, discovering the passage around Africa. He discovers that there is a water route that can go from Portugal around the west coast of Africa and up the east coast into India. Next, in 1492, Christopher Columbus began his expedition, a first westward voyage to the Indies. And 5 years later, in 1497, John Cabot sails for England looking for the Northwest Passage. Unconvinced that Columbus or Cabot had actually discovered a new way to a new land, in 1498, the Portuguese send Vasco da Gama to replicate the voyages of Bartholomew Diaz 10 years prior. Da Gama, he rounds the Cape of Good Hope and is the first European to reach India directly by sea, and paves the way for Europeans, and in particular the Portuguese, to set up a permanent colony in Asia. 1 year later, in 1499, Amerigo Vespucci, who had traveled with Columbus on his first two voyages, travels across the Atlantic Ocean and reaches the mouth of the Amazon River in what is now modern-day Brazil. It was during these expeditions that Vespucci comes back to Europe, compares plant life, India and China, and he quietly speculates that Columbus landed on a whole new landmass with the idea that the Atlantic Ocean might be bigger than previously thought. From 1519 to 1522, Ferdinand Magellan sets out on an expedition to circumnavigate the world. In 1532, cartographers permanently Latinized the term Americo or America as a way for showing maps and land in the New World. And finally, in 1535, the French send Jacques Cartier to explore parts of North America. He will sail up and down the northeast of what is North America, and he will help establish a permanent colony for Canada in what will become Quebec. So, what we have to understand, young scholars, is that Europeans weren't exploring out of scientific curiosity. They were exploring out of necessity, and the 1500s wasn't necessarily an age of exploration, but an age of competitiveness, where the country that controlled the trade routes, a country that could set up the most colonies in the New World, would be the dominant country of the world.